Then I am going to share my screen with you all so we can get started with today's presentation. And I like to always begin this seminar with my now classic introduction by me saying, good morning, everybody. My name is Jorge Ochoa, and I am addicted to fruits. That is passion fruit for me. That is my addiction. And my addiction started with the plant that you see on the screen. This was my very first passion flower, passion vine. And when I came across it, then I saw the fruit. Now, the fruit is edible, and I've heard many rumors. I've encountered many people that have told me that they were told when they were little that if they were to eat the fruit, they'll die instantly, which is actually not true. But inside, there was and the orange fruit, and inside we have a beautiful red color that you can eat. And I sample it early on in my exploration of passion fruits. And is it the best one? But the literature says otherwise. And that is what I set up myself to kind of look into. Because many of the books, many of the literature will refer to this fruit as having a cranberry like taste. And I'm like, ah, I'm not sure what kind of cranberry they're eating, but that does not taste like cranberry. And so as I got more experience with passion fruit, people inevitably kept asking me, which is the better tasting, which is the better tasting. And I was never really into that. My whole introduction to passion vine was because of the plant and the flower. So it was later on that I came with the fruit. Inevitably, it became necessary for me to provide the information to the public and to also generate what I like to refer to as Jorgito's test rating, because today we get to see many passion fruit that are not going to be common. You may have not seen them, or you may have not have seen it yet. But here's how Jorgito's rating is going to go. The first one is going to be super yuck. Let me translate that to say, do not eat. Are there poisonous passion fruit? The answer is yes. Has there been records or recorded casualty? The answer is yes. In the mid 80s, there was a child or so, two children that died from eating a passion fruit that they were not supposed to. Next one is going to be yuck. Translating it into butter and sugar, please, because obviously we are can make, put butter and sugar and make a pie out of everything, and it's going to be absolutely delicious. But that's not what we are here for. We're here for to at least try the fruit when it's fresh out of the vine. There will be some processes that you can do, but for now, some of those you can improve upon by adding butter and sugar. And if you add coconut and pineapple, then you have a winning combination. The next one will be okay, which is not the best one, but I can eat it, I can swallow it. The next one is going to be yum. And this is, I like this one, which is going to be good. And the last category is going to be super yum, which means you got any more. And unfortunately, those are the ones that are going to be kind of not giving me a lot of fruit. So this would be the taste rating that we'll use throughout this presentation so that you will understand. And keep in mind, this is Jorgito's rating. If you disagree with it, that's great. Because then you can create your own rating, because at the end of the day, my taste buds are going to be different than yours. And so I know Margaret adores sour fruit, which I cannot eat. And she will always favor the sour fruits over the sweet kind that I do love. And so keep that in mind. Yes, this is Jorgito's test rating, but also this comes from just maybe one or two plants that are in cultivation. Keeping in mind that people have done a lot of selection, people have done a lot of hybridization, and they have improved upon some of the plants. So may have gotten something that was not as good as maybe somebody's growing in Australia, which I had some of that experience. And I'm going to begin with one of the more common passion fruit, and only to show how the children may have gotten confused. And for a while, I could not understand. I grown passion fruit. How can anybody confuse them and eat the wrong one? So this is the one that is very popular. We'll talk about it later on. But this is the one that is poisonous. And it is poisonous when it's green. And when I found it in the wild, I could not tell the difference. It was only when I opened it and I realized the color of the pulp is very different. And so I was ready to eat it. I could have actually maybe poisoned myself, but I could tell not then why the children may have gotten confused. This one is from Chiapas, but the culprit is going to be this one, which is from Colombia and Venezuela. And the casualty occurred in Venezuela. It's purple. It looks very similar, like the more common one that we'll talk about later. And a child, 8, 9, 10 years, that was given a fruit would probably not have not known the difference. And so, yes, they may look very similar. Here is the fruit for scale. And here is the fruit next to the more common purple passion fruit. And yes, they could look very similar. They can even be the same size. But when we cut them open, you'll see a big difference in the color of the pulp. And keep in mind, this is only poisonous when the fruit is green or when it's immature. Once it's mature, once it has ripened, the fruit is safe. And I have eaten it and it's not bad. So that brought a lot of light into how can anybody confuse this fruit and have actually killed them, kill themselves. But that's the answer. And here's the close-up of the pulp with the color. And so we get to talk about the different passion fruits, passion flowers that are going to be out there, concentrating on the fruit. I do have a different seminar that talks about the flowers, but you don't want to hear that one because you want to talk about fruits. And there's going to be a lot of them. So there are over 60 species of edible passion fruit. Are they all good? Well, it depends on the individual. And there will be many that are going to be commercially grown for the fruit. And those are obviously going to be some of the best ones that you can find. But here's just some example of some of the wild forms that I came across when I was exploring Ecuador. And so to begin, we get to kind of introduce some of these topics, general introduction, the anatomy, the pollination, because that will become a lot more important as you are branching into more of the species and away from the cultivated ones. And then we get to look at the different individuals that you may come across and or the individuals that I have managed to come across and grown and gotten the fruit to evaluate it and sample it. And so when we look at the passion fruit, we have to begin with the history. The history of passion fruit in the 16th centuries, the Spanish missionaries came to the Americas and they saw the flower and the fruit, and that's when they found and called it passion flower or different names because of the doctrine of signature they associated with the crucifixion of Christ. Then passion fruit was introduced into Hawaii. And so it was introduced into an area known as lilycoid, which is also the common name for the golden passion fruit in Hawaii. Many people believe that passion fruit originates from Hawaii, but it does not. It originates from Brazil or South America, but it was introduced, it is now in Hawaii, and it was probably gotten a fame like the pineapple out of Hawaii, but it's not from Hawaii. Passion fruit later got into Australia, and Australia is one of the biggest producers. Australia and New Zealand. There have been a lot of hybrids and selections coming out of Australia. And then later on, started in South America, and now Colombia and Ecuador. And Peru will be some of the major growers of passion fruit for the industry. And so here we have the origins. And so as mentioned before, most of the passion fruit, or at least the ones that you can consider good for fruit, will come from Central and South America. A few species from Asia, I've tried a few, they're not that good. But by far the South American species and or selections will be the best. And this would be how you would find the plants. The plants are going to be vines, the ones that will bear the fruit, and they're going to be opportunistic like any other vines that will be out there. So they're going to wait for trees to fall. They're going to wait for clearing, some kind of clearing of the forest, so that they would be able to get enough light to grow. And so when I'm looking for new plants or plants in the wild, I'm going to hang around disturbed areas such as roads, because then I can get close to them. Here's another one. This is in Argentina, where we came across different passion fruits. And it was there that I happened to find this one growing in the wild. Now, when we look at a passion fruit, we're going to see a couple of things. Stem, obviously, it's a plant. It's going to have a stem that is going to be able to climb. It's going to have the tendril, a modified stem that is going to be used for clinging or hooking onto whatever structure or trees or branches, and that's going to allow the plant to hold themselves. It's going to have a leaf, obviously important for photosynthesis, needs sugar, especially if you want some of those sweet fruits. There's going to be the flower, very, very important to have a flower, because that will then become the fruit. And in the wild, very rare to see a fruit. And in this case, I happen to find a flowering plant with a fruit. Obviously, there's going to be a lot more animals that are going to get up earlier than you. So fruits are going to always be missing or very rare to find. But the fruit is going to also be there. Now, if we look at the flower itself, there's going to be several features. We can cut it in a cross section, so that I can show you the column. That's going to be important, because that's going to support very valuable components. One of them is going to be the anthers, the male part of the flower, which will have the pollen, and then the petals and sepals for pollination and attraction. And the corona filament. I know corona has become a bad word, but it is a good word in passion flowers. So the corona made up of with many filaments, which is going to be the fringy part of the flower. And then the stigma, the area or the female component that will be the site where the pollen needs to be placed for pollination. And then the ovary, which is going to be also very valuable as the flower gets pollinated and then fertilized. Because when we fast forward time, the ovary is going to turn into the fruit. And then you have the remnants of the flowers that will have done their part, and then they will then wither and go away. But it is the mature ovary that we will call the fruit that is going to be very important. Now, when we have the fruit and then we cut it in half, this is what you're going to find. We're going to find that there's going to be a lot of pulp, or some amount of pulp. In most instances, this would be where the sugar is going to be held. This would be the edible component of the fruit. There's going to be some seeds, many of them. And the seeds could be small or large, could be soft or hard. And so you do have an option, and often that is going to be what may be negative about the fruit, that the seeds are going to be the problem. Or the seed to pulp ratio is going to be seriously unbalanced. And so you're going to be eating a lot more seeds than pulp, and that's not going to make this fruit palatable. But the seeds are edible. The seeds can be planted. The seeds could be chewed. The seed could be swallowed. The seeds could be spat out, or you can spit them out if you need to. And then we have the rind. In most passion fruits, the rind is not going to be edible. There will be one that I will show you later on where the rind will be edible and you can eat it as a vegetable as well. So here is a scale for the seeds, just to show you that some of the larger ones, when they are in the fruit, that could be a problem. So be aware during this test rating, if the seeds were predominant or dominating over the flavor, obviously they're gonna not be as good or not gonna get a high rating. And here's what you can do. So you can either cut the fruit in half and scoop it with a spoon, or you can also prepare it. You can take the pulp and strain it and create a concentrate that can then be used for cooking or for making a passion fruit juice or for whatever you may need. And this could also be something that you need to be aware of. If you're going to be straining them, it is a lot of work. There's many methods that are out there that people recommend, but at the end of the day, it's going to be a lot of work and you're not going to be getting a large amount of juice, to be honest. But be aware, this would be another way that you can definitely eat the fruit. And then we have the pollination. Obviously, except for a few selected varieties that do not mind selfing or being not requiring pollination, most of the others, or especially the species, will require some kind of pollination. And that brings a different problem because passion flowers in general are going to be self-incompatible, meaning that they do not want their own pollen. And so you're gonna have to have a different, either a species that will be compatible or a different genetic clone of the same species. And the problem is that in most instances, what you're gonna find out there is just gonna be one single clone that is gonna be propagated through cuttings, and that's it, which you will never see the fruit because the pollen will never be accepted. And so it may be necessary as you're venturing out and growing different types of passion fruit to have more than one, just to make sure that you're going to have the pollen to bring about pollination. Around here, we have the carpenter bee that will do a good job. We also have some bumblebees that can do the job. The honeybee, for some of the smaller ones, can definitely bring about pollination, or in some of the commercial operation in South America, there's going to be even bigger bumblebees that will do the job. And even smaller native bees, the one we have here, whether by accident or plants don't really care. While the bee is looking for pollen, moving around, it may come across the stigma and deposit pollen and bring about pollination. So even smaller animals could do the job. The other thing that you need to be aware as you are going to might require to hand pollinate a flower is that plants are going to have their reproductive structure that will mature at different stages. So this is called protandrous, which meaning that the pollen or the stamens will mature and release the pollen first, while the stigmas are not going to be receptive. And that can be seen with the image where the stigmas are up. That means that the animal is going to come here, take the pollen, and it will not deposit the same pollen that is picked up from here onto the stigma. It is a few hours later when the stigmas will then drop lower. And now a bee that is bringing the pollen from a different flower will come here and now will bring the pollen to a receptive stigma. So that is very important. So you should be pollinating the plant when the stigmas have come down or are now receptive. And so pollination by hand is going to be important in some instances because obviously some of the insects will be good, but not all of them will recognize the flowers. But it is very, very simple. All you need is two different passion flowers at the time, and you take the stamen from one with the pollen and take it and deposit it in the stigma or on the stigma, and then take the pollen and vice versa. And if they are compatible and if it's successful, then you would get the passion fruit that will come later on. And here is the assortment of different ones that I came across Ecuador in one of my travels. And here is an assortment of other forms, shapes, and sizes that I have grown here in, I guess it will be Long Beach for me, but here in Southern California. So there's gonna be a lot of variation on the fruits. Remember, over 60 species that are edible. Now, if we go back maybe into the past and we find a wild passion fruit, it's going to look like this. And this is another thing that I want you to think about. What has been the human influence to plants? We have been selecting them, cultivating them for over 400 years, and that's only the recorded time. And so the plants that you may be growing might look very different than some of the wild forms. And so here is what is going to be considered probably the wild form of the purple passion fruit. And this one, we came across it in Brazil. And the first thing you're going to notice is not as ornate, or the corona is not as well developed. It has fruit, and the flower are not going to be as big. So here is a close-up of the flower, probably nothing like you've seen around. And here's where it was growing wild, right on top of a rock next to the beach. And it was very, very happy. And it even had some nectary glands that were dark, purple black. And that was also very unusual to see. What you're going to come across here is this one. And so from the previous one, you can see a lot of changes, changes that may have been brought about by people. From the selection, people kept selecting the nicer one and or the one that had the sweeter or the better tasting fruit. And so that came to the one that we have right now. And a couple of years ago, I was contacted about the different passion fruit selections or varieties that are out there. And they said, could you mind describing the different selections that are out there? And I said to them, what are you talking about? The California Red Fruit Grower in their journal and in their website has a lot of different varieties that they have already been growing. And they said, yes, but none of them have been described or officially described for the American Horticulture Society. And so I did in 2013, 2010, so a couple of years ago. I described the different varieties or forms for the passion fruits. And are they still all around? I don't think so. I think as time has gone by, they have evolved into the ones that we have right now. Maybe in the 80s, when people started growing passion fruit, they selected a few of them, kind of named them or gave them a name, never really officially. And so do not be surprised if you have tried to find them and they're not available because they're probably gone. And can we go back and recreate the cross? Perhaps, if we know. But just be aware that I get asked all the time, do you know where I can find this? I was like, yeah, let me know when you find it because I've been looking for it for many, many years. But I was able to officially publish the passion fruits selection that are out there, and there's going to be more coming later on. And so one of the best one that you can grow out here and you can eat fresh is going to be the purple passion fruit. So whenever somebody asks me which is the best tasting passion fruit to grow and that is easy and that bears a lot of fruit, and that's going to be the purple. It is going to be self, and it's also going to give you high yields. It's also going to be the sweeter form or the sweeter kind. And here it is growing in somebody's yard. Here it is when it's covered with fruits. And here's when I have come across several of them falling from the ground or picked up from the ground, falling on the ground. And here just for scale. that you can see. And when you open it, this is how it's going to look. And this is how you're going to serve them at your party. I think this was actually the fruit festival for the California Red Fruit growers in South Coast Botanic Garden when I took this photograph. And that is definitely a very good tasting fruit. So if nothing else, the purple passion fruit is going to be one of the best. The other thing that you need to be aware of is that as soon as the fruit drops from the vine, the rind is going to begin to lose water. And that is going to give the fruit a prune-like wrinkle appearance. It is important for you to understand that inside the pulp is still good or is still going to be edible. And as I started to work with new species or new plants, new fruits that I've never encountered before, this became very important and I was not really aware. But yeah, sometimes when you let the fruit sit on a table for a few days, the sugar content will increase and it will become a lot better. So be aware of that. I had to learn the hard way, but now I tried the fruit when they fall off the vine and also a few days later to see if there's a big difference. And sometimes there is. If we are to look at the commercial production of passion fruit, here is commercial production in Colombia. And I had the opportunity to visit this site. They are growing fresh passion fruit for exporting them to Europe, Asia, and few to the eastern United States. And this is how they are grown. They're grown into what is known as a curtain style. They just let them drape. So here I am for scale. So we have the vine growing on top of a trellis and then prune them on a regular basis to just allow some of those vines branches to cascade, and that makes it easy for them to harvest. And the fruits are harvested about 70% color. And that is to ensure that in the time that it takes for them to go from the farm to the packing house to through a boat, on a boat to the supermarket, they will arrive at 100% color. So that prevents the rotting or the early rotting. So just be aware of that because they're not picked at their prime sugar content, but that is the standard for the commercial passion fruits to be picked at about 70% color. Here's just some images of different nurseries out here growing passion fruits that I've been able to see. And these are the plants that you may find at different areas. And as you walk around the city, these are just different methods and ways that people grow the passion fruit, just sometimes on top of a fence or growing on a metal wire trellis, growing on some kind of structure that they made for the vine, and or growing on a window or out of a window, and or as a carport on top of a cart, and even as a trellis or in some kind of climbing apparatus with fruit. So the vine does not require a lot, even a container. Obviously, if I had to recommend, the bigger container best would be best. But even a small one can be good enough for most passion fruit if you don't mind sacrificing some of the yields. But container grown is going to be great. And they don't require much, just some place to hang or grow out of and climb. And obviously, palms would be a very good climbing apparatus or some fabricated trash bin made into a planter and growing a beautiful passion fruit. So they don't mind, they will grow out of anything. The next one is going to be the variety Frederick. And this is where I'm going to caution you that most nurseries are going to be growing the passion fruit or selling the Frederick. Is Frederick out there? I don't think so. I think Frederick is already gone. However, Frederick in the early 80s, when they started to hybridize and select, they selected some of the red forms that became a lot better than the purple, or that became the preferred method. And that was given the name Frederick. So Frederick was very good for its time. But once again, as people kept taking different passion fruits and selecting them, I don't think that some of the ones that you have now are going to be any better or worse than the Frederick that was introduced in the mid 80s. But nurseries still sell plants by the name of Frederick. And so whenever somebody says Frederick, I always ask for a certificate of authenticity, which they can never give it to me. And so just be aware. Most of these vines are going to be grown from seeds, and I am well aware of that. And so obviously, once you have grown a plant from seed, even though it gives you a red fruit, you cannot call it Frederick's. A nursery's own mine. And so I have here just photograph of what is being sold as a Frederick variety. Like I said, just some of the reds. Are the reds good? The answer is yes. They're a little bit tart than the purple. They have the advantage of having more of a bigger fruit, more pulp, and a little bit more tart. They're also self, which is good. And so right now, probably 50% of the people prefer the red over the purple ones. Here's just the fruit for scale and just the coloration. So the more of a reddish color. And then as I kept exploring, I came across this one from Australia that is very dark purple. Now, if you go into some kind of the fufu stores, you may buy a single fruit for about 350. If you go to the unfufu store, you can get a pound for 350. So your choice. I happened to pick one of these because I've never seen it. And to my surprise, the seeds were separate from the pulp, which is something that I've never really seen, which is great. I mentioned before, Australia is growing a lot of passion fruits, and New Zealand has a New Zealand Passion Fruit Association, Growers Association, and the same thing with Australia. And they are bringing out a lot of very interesting fruits and new ones into the industry. And so this one was good, but to me, my surprise was that the seeds were separated from the pulp, so that takes away a lot of the work in cleaning them. And then there's a few others that I came across, and these are available in some of the online nurseries. Possum purple, which here I'm holding for scale with the reddish color pulp. Rind, and here's the pulp. And this is definitely good. And here is the red rover, which I also came across, a little bit bigger with the pulp. And so here is the three of them, a common purple passion fruit here, the red rover, and the smaller one would be the possum purple. Here are the fruits when you cut them. So yes, there's going to be a big difference in the seed to pulp ratio. And yes, there's a very difference in the thickness and how hard the seeds are going to be. And here's the close-up of that. And this is the rind. Once I have sampled the pulp for educational purpose or research purpose, I took no pleasure in eating any of these fruits. It's all research. And then in my travels through Colombia, they were growing what they were referring as the pink passion. And this one came from Australia. They were growing it as a sample or as a test site. And they happened to later on give me a nice fruit. Here they're ripening. And so here is the fruit on my hand for scale when it was given to me. And here's when I opened it. Now, as the fruit get bigger, you're gonna find a lot more empty space. So that's gonna be also very important. So make sure that whenever you're gonna be picking a fruit, make sure it feels heavy so that that is gonna give you the most pulp and not just a bunch of empty space. Is this one a good one? Yes, it's like a red one. And here's in comparison with the common purple passion fruit. And then more common is going to be the golden passion fruit. The Floricarpa, here is a plantation in Ecuador. And this is going to be the one that is going to be grown for the pulp. The purple one is going to be for the fresh fruit. The golden one is going to be for the pulp because it is going to be a lot more sour. It is going to be bigger. It's going to have a lot more juice. So it lends itself way better to being grown for the pulp. Here's where I happen to be now in Colombia. I visited a farm, and this is where I went under the vine. And here's growing a different method. So this is now more like the trellis type or top. You've seen the curtain method. So here's the curtain method. And there I am for scale with some of the vines. And here are some of the ones that I came across. And this is just from one farm. They are all grown from seed. So obviously there will be some variation. And so just out of one farm, I was able to pick all these different sizes, colors, shapes, and all of that. And this is still the golden passion fruit. And then different cultures will have their preference. This is a much smaller golden passion fruit, and this is the variety that you find in Cuba or in the Caribbean. And this is even sour, more sour than the previous ones. And so when you ask the people from the Caribbean, which one do you like or which one are you looking for? They always say that little one that is very sour is very good. And so in my trip to Cuba, I came across it, and obviously I had to photograph. It's a lot smaller. It's almost the size of a purple one, but this is what they like. They don't like the big one. And here's just an insight for scale and for photograph. And then in Mexico, this is what they're being offered: kind of wrinkled, kind of green, and here it is from out of the market. And in Brazil, this is what they're growing. Brazil is now credited with having one of the largest passion fruit, or at least growing some of the larger ones. So here's out of the market and out of a box. And yes, that is going to be okay. And I'm going to say okay because it is going to be very sour. And unless you're Margaret that loves sour things, most of you will probably find it too sour to eat it as a fresh fruit. However, when you take the vine and you add some cream, you add some sugar, you add some flavoring, yes, it becomes very, very, very good. And so you will find many, many products that are going to be out there. So just a little bit of sugar is enough to make just the juice very, very good. So you have oats or oatmeal with passion fruit. You have yogurt, although here they show the purple passion fruit. That is just for the photograph. In reality, it is the golden pulp that is used. And you have all kinds of salad dressing and kind of uses. Obviously, desserts and pastries, you can use it. And even sorbets, you can use the passion fruit. And Ken Ueda's famous chiffon pie, famous in Hawaii, very, very good. And all of those are going to be very good if you ever get a chance. And in my travels and wherever I see anything new with passion fruit, obviously I have to stop and try it because that's my job. Uh, and just plain simple juice, passion fruit juice, especially if you allow the seeds to remain, a little bit of sugar, yes, that is going to be very, very good. And so here's some of the gold ones that I have managed to grow here in Long Beach. And here's just for scale, the golden with the red and some of the different purples, reds that I've grown here in Long Beach. And here's for scale with the common orange blue passion fruit or blue passion flower that is out there for scale, so you can see the difference. Here's just some more photograph. This is in my trip to Colombia. Definitely a very good place for passion fruits. Here is one of the bigger ones that I came across in Colombia. And this one definitely had more juice. And I hate to say that it was almost good enough for me to eat. So I think as time has gone by, as more selection has taken place, they are taking some of the sourness out of them and they are getting to be sweeter. So this one was sweet enough for me to eat right out of the as a fresh fruit, which I will never do for the golden passion fruit. And these are just some of the ones that I came across in Colombia. The reds are kind of mixed with the gold, so I think it's just a variation, and they don't really separate them. And even the purple, common purple one here. Uh, and of course, I had to get supplies. So I have to load up with passion fruit in my travel. So I happened to find a farm and managed to get just a couple of bags, enough to sustain me for the trip. So that was very important. And when that wasn't enough, then I happened to get a nice truck and get a couple more passion fruits for me to enjoy in my travels. Uh, and so not too long ago, a friend of mine brought back some seeds from Hawaii, and he said it was a speckled or spotted passion fruit. And, let me try it. Let me see. And so here it is. And I happen to grow this one here in Long Beach. And yeah, it's not purple, it's not red, it's not gold, it's kind of spotted. And so I grew it, and it was very interesting. And so it was has some nice pulp. It was a little bit tart, and so that kind of I started wondering, what is happening? So here's a photograph. On the left, you have kind of the purplish, and then on the right, you have the gold, and that one falls right in the middle. So is it the lack of the purple or the red that is causing this, or is it some kind of recessive gene that somebody just selected the right plant and kind of selected this, not purple, not red, not purple, yellow passion fruit? And so here I grown several of them. Here's just a close-up of the fruit. And here's just the assortment of the different ones that I've grown, again, different seeds, some with the purple for scale and the gold for scale. So yeah, it's kind of like the golden one, but at least it's giving us a different color. And then in a market, I came across this one that is being grown in Florida. Now, when I saw it, I was very intrigued because it's kind of cutesy. It's small. It's about the size of an apricot. And so it was about $4 a piece. And I had to buy it because I wanted the seeds. Was it the best tasting? No, it was actually bad. But I had to have the seeds, so I did not mind paying the $4 for the single fruit. But it's been grown out of Florida, very, very red. And so here it is for scale with the purple, the gold, and the red from Florida that I come across. And then in a different market, I saw it again, but this one was more of the normal size. So the cutesy little one, I think they were runt, and they were being sold for that. But in I think this is in around Bruce's area. This is the market by Bruce's house in Malibu. And it was big, and so that kind of got like, okay, now I was full, so I purchased some for the seeds, and here's just a lot bigger, and had a few wrinkles. Maybe those that will become better, but it was still too sour for me. And so here is just for comparison the different forms that I've grown or I have gotten from the store. So the golden I've grown. The spotted, as time goes by and it becomes older, it gets a little bit more color. The red one from Florida and the common purple that you will see on the supermarkets. Here's just a different view. And here's the top view. And then when you cut them, this is what you're gonna find. Now, I like to point out that mine have a lot more pulp or less empty space than the commercial form. So you get a lot more pulp and juice from the ones that you grow or that I grown here. And so here's the spotted one, and here's the gold one, and there's the red one from Florida, and here's just the common purple one that you get at the stores, commercially grown. So those would be kind of the more popular ones. Now, when we venture away from those, we'll find a couple of other species that will have an edible fruit. And this red one is common, and most people don't realize that it will have a fruit. Most of them will say it does not have a fruit. It does not have a fruit. This is where hand pollination needs to come in. This is where you take the pollen from the blue one and you hand pollinate it to get the fruit. If you don't do that, you can live many years with this vine and never see an actual fruit. So here it's been grown in different areas, and here it is. The fruit looks striped or has stripes. It looks almost like a watermelon. There it is for scale on my hand, and here's the inside, and here's some of the pulp. Is it good? It's okay, not the best one. And here it is in comparison to one that we'll see later on, the purple one. And so here is that red flower for scale. And then the fragrant granadilla, this is from Brazil. It is being grown commercially. Here it is when I saw it in Ecuador, and here is when I saw it in Brazil. This is at a market. It kind of looks like the Hawaiian papaya, but obviously it is not. And this one is very, very good. However, I have a need to find it so that I can get a photograph of the cross section, because I wasn't thinking about that when I came across all these fruits. So we owe you that one. And then a few others, some of them that may look like the common purple one. Inside is going to be brightly colored pulp, but most of them are going to be really bad. So I will not recommend that. So yes, you can try them, you can sample them when they ripen, but just be aware they're not going to be too good. There is another one that is also commonly available. It's called Ruby Glow. You find it in any garden center, and here's a gigantic one growing in Long Beach. Here's one that I grew in here. And so here's the flower. Once again, hand pollination. Here's a couple of them grown here in Long Beach, and hand pollination will give you a fruit the size of a navel orange. Inside is going to be a lot of pulp, and it's going to be good. And I hate to use the words taste like pineapple, because I mentioned before, I like to use the words taste as good as pineapple, not taste like. So is it as good as pineapple? No, but it's going to have a similar flavor to it. So you'll not hear me say the word taste like. There is another hybrid that is being sold under the name Quadrangularis. Be aware, this is not Quadrangularis. This is a hybrid, also available in all garden centers and even Home Depot. So here's the fruit when I was able to hand pollinate it to get the fruit. And inside we have the pulp with the seeds. And it's also good if you wanted to try it. Now, the real giant or the biggest passion fruit would be the giant granadilla or quadrangularis. Here it is in the first time I came across it in French Guiana. And here it is for scale. And later on in my different travels, I've come across it many times. So here it is with a big guanabana in Colombia. And here it is in Colombia for scale. And here it is being sold at a road stand fruit market. And here I am for scale for that. And so, yes, this is the one that you would cut open. You can then take the seeds, take the pulp, and make a very, very good juice out of it. So it's a very good flavor one. And so this would also be the one that the rind is going to be very thick. And so you can take the rind and you can cook it and or boil it. And it does have a texture and flavor that is going to be very similar to zucchini or marrow, as it is referred to in Europe. And so, but that's okay. You can flavor it with some spices, and it's going to be way better. But it's okay. And then after I came across it in South America, then one of my students told me that they had one growing here in Westminster. Like, I've never seen it. I've seen it in the literature. People recommend it, but I've never seen it. And so I was lucky to have gone to this house where they have had it for many years. And yes, it was flowering and it was also fruiting. So it will grow outdoors here if you protect it. So it is going to be a little bit tender. So grow it, protect it, and then eventually it will start bearing flowers and then fruit. And so that fruit that I'm holding right there later on came to me. So the students came back and said, my uncle wanted me to give you this. And so I had the fruit and I opened it, and definitely it was very, very good. And so there's for research purposes, the fruit. Uh, and in Colombia, I asked about the passion fruit and milk and if it was really good. And obviously they said yes. And one of the, I would say, ladies made it for me. And I had a giant granadilla milk drink. And yes, it is, as they say, it is very, very, very good. And so in my last trip to Colombia, these are some of the fruits that I came across. And what I want to point out is going to be this one right here, which is the golden passion fruit in comparison with the more bigger sister, or the giant one, the biggest. And as mentioned before, they are selecting the golden one for size. And so this one is almost as big as the big one, or the biggest passion fruit in the world. And so it's just selection. I came across it. I usually pick the biggest one. And so I wanted to photograph and show you how the human influence has changed the fruits a lot. And on my way out from South America, I had a wonderful time in Trinidad and Tobago. I just had one day to do three things: go to the market, go to a botanic garden, and see a lot of plants. That's it. And so the market was the first one. And obviously, they had passion fruit. Only one vendor had it. And definitely wanted some of them. And so here's the fruit, and there's for scale. I'm holding this fruit. And as I went around the island, then I stumbled upon an actual plant or several plants that were being grown, and they had the fruit. So this is now my kind of my first observations of the commercial growing of this big one. Uh, and so then you have a few others that will have a very decent sized fruit, including this one that I grew many years ago. That's how the fruit will change color when it's ripened, and that's how it looks inside. Once again, pulp to seed ratio, it's a lot of seeds uh, to the pulp, but it's still good if you do not mind the seeds. Or there's going to be several hybrids. This one that came out of Holland that it's a beautiful color fruit, and there's when it's ripened for scale, and inside a little bit better seed to pulp ratio. And this one is definitely good if you happen to come across it, and it's commonly available. And then somebody gave me Yara, developed by a scientist from Chile, and I've grown it here in the garden. And here it is. It's a hybrid, so it's not as nice or pretty as the others. It doesn't really change to a nice color. But again, pulp to seed ratio, the pulp is good, but there's a lot of seeds inside it. And then the sweet calabash, the one that is known for having the rind that becomes as hard as a macadamia nut, requiring either strong teeth or a hammer. And that is definitely very, very good if you get a chance. And it's also self, so you do not need to hand pollinate it. And then in my travels, I came across a few others that are also known as sweet calabash. Here's from Ecuador when it mature, and here's the inside, and that is also very, very good. And then the one that is native to Eastern United States, again, I had the chance to find it in Florida, growing wild, and I'm guilty. I don't think I gave it a real good evaluation because it was kind of green, but it was the only one that I found. I know people who say that they have some that are very sweet and very good. So for now, it gets an okay until I get a better one, or I find some ripened fruits to evaluate it. A few others that you may want to try, some hybrids, bears fruit once in a while that will turn orange. It's okay, not that good. Or Nigradina, this one is from not Argentina, Venezuela and Colombia. I grew it from seeds a couple of years ago. The fruit turns gold with those white spots, which is very attractive. And so here is the pulp. Not a lot of juice. However, the pulp is very, very good. And when this was given to me, it was given to me as one of the sweetest passion fruits that is out there. And I would have to agree with that. That is very sweet and very good. And then there's the water lemon that I've grown. That is going to be very juicy. Here it is when I cut, and you can see the juice. And this is definitely in the super good, very good category. Now, there's some arguments out there because we have here one that I photographed at the Fruit and Spice Park in Florida. And when I looked at that fruit, it's a little bit smaller than what I'm used to. And it's like, why is this? It still very, very good, but why is this fruit a lot smaller? So here's the flower for that one. And here's the flower in Cuba. And so what is happening with the plants that are out there that are being called water lemon is that there's going to be two different plants in cultivation. Some that are from South America that will have a big fruit, and some that are going to have their origin in the Caribbean that is going to have a smaller fruit. So there's still some work to be done, whether it's a different species and all that, but there is a very big difference in the fruit. So this is in the wild, and here is the fruit for scale for the Caribbean species. And yes, it is very, very good. And I have managed to grow both of them here. And so here is on the left, you have the Caribbean plant, what I call the Caribbean plant. And on the right, you have the South American. So are they different? I think they should, or at least they are, or unless somebody selected the right plant. But either way, both of them are very, very good if you get the chance to grow them and try them. And here they are with the Nigradina, just for scale, and the Caribbean water lemon. In Mexico, in Chiapas, came across this one in the wild, Cerulata. Here it is when I've grown it here in cultivation. Here's the fruit, and that's okay. Fruit to pulp ratio, sweet, but too much seeds. And then there's actinia that is also commonly available here. It has a small fruit, just like an apricot. The inside is going to have, so there's a scale. There's when I grown many of them. Here's the inside. And this one will definitely get a very good rating. The flavor is going to be similar to grape, and not as good as grapes, but similar. And a close sister is going to be elegance. That's going to be a lot sweeter. Previous one, actinia, needs hand pollination. Elegance do not. Here's the fruit when they ripen. The shell is also, the rind is going to become kind of like a shell, so you can just kind of crack it. And inside, you're going to have some very sweet pulp. And here's a close-up. And this is definitely in the very good super yum category. Or its other close sisters. So those are going to be the ones. Cidifolia that I've grown a little bit bigger fruit and turning gold color. And here you can see the seeds and the pulp, and that is also very good. And so here are the three of them, all of them super yum, just for scale, so you can see the difference. And here's the inside of one, and the inside of the other, and the inside of the other, so they look very different, but all for good. And then there's the Love in the Mist passion vine, which will have a fruit, and they will be selfing. Some of them will have a little more pulp than others. They're okay. And there's the one from Arizona, native to North America, Arizona desert. They're okay. They're sweet. They may have an aftertaste. They're not the best ones. And then there's the sweet granadilla, probably the more popular. And as the name says, the sweet granadilla will be very sweet fruit. So here is growing. Here is the plants being sold throughout the areas, and the fruits being sold in different markets that I've come across in my travels. So here they are. And so this is the inside, and this is definitely very, very good. Can you grow it here? The answer is yes. It requires some area where it's going to be some coolness to it. So grow the roots or the plant in the shade and allow the plant to grow in the sun. Will it fruit and flower here? Yes, there's some plants here in Long Beach, as well as the Orange County California Red Fruit Growers has a person that grows them for them as well. So here is an ocean. So in my travels, my last trip to Colombia, we happened to go to a farm. So this is just a sea, an ocean of just trellis passion fruit. It was very nice to be able to see them. They were being maintained or pruned. And luckily, I had the right height to be able to walk underneath them without any problem. And the best thing is that we were allowed to pick whatever fruit we wanted and eat it on the spot. And so it was a very nice experience. And so once you get the fruit, there's going to be several ways that you can eat it. Number one is, okay, you're going to get it from the market here. And so the first method is to simply peel the rind. So the rind is going to be it's going to crack or break. And so you peel it, and then you have something like an ice cream. So then you just enjoy it fresh out of your hand. That would be the ideal field experience or field way to eat it in the field. Or in my trip to Colombia, I came across some very fancy technology, which is going to be known as a passion fruit straw. So it was developed just for eating this specific passion fruit. It even comes with instructions as to how to use it properly. So you shake the fruit, kind of separate the arrows, and then you will then stab the fruit with the straw, and then you will drink the content. If you leave anything behind, the straw can also act as a spoon to ensure that you eat everything that's inside. So sophisticated technology for eating passion fruit. And passion fruit or the sweet granadilla is now mainstream here in Southern California. For many years, it was only in my trips where I get to enjoy it. And 2, 3 years ago, it started to be imported into Southern California. So it's grown in Mexico, and I've seen it in several of the bigger supermarkets as well as the Swan meats, and I've seen it for months now. And so this is something that if you have never had it, you should definitely make an effort to go find them. They are not available right now because it is a commodity, and I guess many people, because of the situations, are not purchasing other than the necessary things. So I'll say just hold back. But when things get better, definitely go out and find this fruit, and you don't have to go too far. So here it is, and so that's how you get him, or you will see him, or you may see him, and there's for scale. And a very close sister of that, which I happen to find in Ecuador, is Palenquensis. So here's the fruit. And there's the fruit for scale, and here's the inside. Now, Palenquensis is not as good. However, this is what I want to remind you. Selection. So the one on the left has been selected and grown for many, many years. It's now grown commercially. The one on the right is still not, hasn't gotten to that point. So it's a couple of 100 years of selections by people that have made it sweeter and better. So the one, the sister is just falling behind. But that's all. So I got a chance to see, and there's the two fruits side by sides for you to see. And then there's the group that is called the banana passion fruit. This would be another high altitude. You need to grow them in the shade or the roots in the shade and the plant in the sun. So they don't taste like banana. They just look like bananas when you clump them together like I'm doing so. Here is the first one that is you might come across. Here's in Ecuador, where I happen to see many of them. And in the literature, it says that it's very good and it's one of the best and it's all this and it's all that. And so I wanted to demystify that. And so in my travels, whenever I would see it available, I'll get a couple of fruits and try them fresh. And so this is my ongoing research. So here's the fruit on my hand. This is how it looks inside. Yes, a lot of pulp. Yes, a little bit of seeds. Yes, you can eat it right out of the fruit, but it's okay. It wasn't as good as the literature says. It wasn't as good as what the internet is saying, because this is one that I get so many phone calls from people wanting to grow this because they saw it online and it says how magnificent it is. As a fresh fruit, it is not. But once again, you add a little bit of cream, you add a little bit of sugar, and yes, it does become very, very good. So it does provide a very good flavoring for other stuff. And here's Tripartita mollissima. So both of them, sometimes they're grown without interchangeably. This is from Peru. This is one that was given to me by a friend from San Francisco who assure me that this is the real thing. So here's where I cut it and the pulp, and it's still okay. And I even asked my friend who's a passion fruit expert on this group if he has ever had any of this form that were actually very good by themselves. And he said, no, they all taste the same. You have to process them or you have to use them in some other form. So here's just out of different markets. Once again, I see them, I grab them just because I know there might be some selections out there that might be sweeter. And in Peru, I had to have them a different way. And again, I don't know how to prepare them. So in Quito, we stop at a market and it's nice to see people eating fruit and fruit juices and a bunch of other things, whatever you want, whatever combination you want. So this definitely gave me the opportunity. Could you prepare this fruit the way you normally would eat it? And they did. You want it with sugar and milk and or water. I had it both ways. Milk is way better. And yes, it is as good as the internet describes it. However, it has to be processed. It cannot be eaten fresh. And in Colombia, just different colors, different stages of ripening. Some of them green. You can still use them. Not good to eat right off hand. And so here's in Colombia, and some that are even getting over ripened right here. And they're still good. And here's just a few others that I've grown here that I come across. Some of them not as good, and some of them just need a little more attention than others. And here's in comparison with one of the red ones that you see across. So you're probably growing as Frederick, most of you. Pitna stipula, this one is from Peru. So here's the fruit when it's green, and then later on turning into this nice golden yellowish color inside, very nice pulp. It's okay, it's not good. Matthewsi that I had a chance to grow here, commonly available. There's a lot of fruit, but it's not as juicy and it's okay. Oaklandia from Oakland, California, or developed in Oakland. It gets gigantic. It's one of the few that will grow out here in the sun. Gives a lot of fruits as well. And no, it's not good. Cerulata that I grown, kind of like the first one that I shown you. And it kind of has the same taste. It's okay. Love Granny, or what is known as the garlic passion fruit. Here it is when it's ripened, so it doesn't change color. And it is being advertised as having a garlic flavor fruit. Ah, I had a student who was looking for one, and somebody asked for it. And I said, have you ever had it? And he said, no, but they saw it on the internet that it tastes like garlic and they want to use it. I said, could you wait a few days? There's one that's about to ripen. When it falls, I'll give it to you. And I did. And this is a student that likes fruit. He's also a member of the California Red Fruit Growers. And inevitably, he just took the pulp and shoved it into his mouth. He said that he wanted to vomit immediately. Does it have a garlic like flavor? Yes, but there's going to be 101 chemical aftertaste behind it. So it's not good. So it's out there. Do not fall for that gimmick that it tastes like garlic. It's garlic like with a bunch of chemicals. And so here's the inside. And yes, yes, this is definitely in the do not eat category. Be warned. You can try it. I gave it to the OC Orange County Red Fruit Growers, and they sold it. But I warned them. I told them don't. So sell it as an ornamental, not as a fruit. Venusta from Ecuador had an opportunity to grow it and got the fruits. And this is, it's okay, needs a lot more work. And then Gabrieliana from French Guiana, I had opportunity, and that's also okay. And then this par that I grew just a couple of years ago, turning into this color. Seed to pulp ratio, it's okay. Per Grandes, this one happened to find in Ecuador. Good pulp to seed ratio, and this is definitely good. I have yet to see it out here. And so here's just a sampler of the different fruits that I came across in my Ecuador trip, which was one of the better ones. And then Amethystina from Brazil. I've grown it for many years. And this is the fruit when it falls off of the vine. So it's ready. And so when I had it and I ate it, and that was just okay. And then the last two fruits of the season, I kind of like, just kind of thrown to the side on top of my desk. And it was a few days later when I sat down and I could detect a fruity smell. I was like, that smells very nice. And then I look and it changed color. So once again, I'm learning that if you give him a couple more days, the fruit does change. Like, ooh, maybe this is supposed to be the way I'm supposed to eat it, because now it's calling my name with this fragrance, but it's still okay. It wasn't that good. It didn't change much. The appearance did, but the fruit, the flavor was not. Reflexiflora here that I grown with the fruit changing to just kind of yellowish color. Inside, not a lot of juice. It's okay. Sprucey, available here, kind of changing to, again, yellowish color. When it ripens, a little bit wrinkles. Inside, it's okay. Racemosa, or being sold as bucios now. Hand pollination, and the fruit looks like this. And okay. Mucronata here with a nice kind of small papaya looking fruit, and inside looks very good, but it's okay. Musi from Venezuela with the golden fruit. Inside, not a lot of pulp. Okay. And then there's what they refer to as the annual passion fruit that happen to grow here, turning this beautiful red color that looks very inviting. There it is for scale on my hand. And in this case, it is the individual seeds that are going to be surrounded by the pulp. It's not good. So I did not want it to give up on this fruit. So I ate the rind and it was bland. So the rind and the fruit is not. But this also gives us another thing to consider. Something like this would be enjoyed by birds or is actually made to attract birds. So to a bird which has different flavor than us mammals, it might be something good. It is the fruits that have evolved with to attract maybe some of the primates that we are going to be considering to be a lot more palatable to us. So this one for us, nope, no good. Membranaceae, this one I found in the wild in Salvador, Central America. I forget the name right now. See in a moment. So again, in the literature, it has edible. Okay. Guatemala. This is from Guatemala. And so I was very lucky to see it and find it ripen in Guatemala. And I collected it, and the inside looks like this. And here's a beautiful golden yellow pulp and the rind, but it's not good. And so once again, did somebody found a very good tasting fruit, or is that the literature just saying it's edible? There's no description as to what the flavor is like. It's actually bland. It doesn't taste like anything. Uh, but in the literature, it says it's edible, but it's super yuck, so don't eat it. And then the bell apple. This one is also commercially produced. I have yet to see it in the US though. Here is my first encounter with it in French Guianas. Inside, it is very, very good. And then in my last trip to Suriname, I just happened to go and play tourist. And so we went to a swan meet. They were selling plants. And there was also a market nearby, or like a, yeah, like a market. But there was one lady who had golden passion fruit and the bell apple. The bell apples were sold, so I kind of had to beg and plead, like, kind of, this is why I came all the way here. So she was, I guess she took pity on me and she sold me one of the bags because they were already sold to her friend, and the friend sold it to me and kind of those things. And yes, I happened to take them, and here's for scale. So this is the Suriname jeans, and inside there is going to be some seeds, but the pulp is very, very good and very, very sweet. Now, in my trip to Chiapas, I came across what is known as ambigua, and this one merits a lot more attention. And so I found the fruit, and then later on, somebody showed me to where there was a big plant. And so here's the fruit being grown in one of the indigenous area or the indigenous home of the indigenous person. And this person in the middle happened to just climb the tree and harvest all those fruits for me. And after asking them how much we want for them, she said, oh, 5 pesos, which is nothing. So I've obviously given more because this is why we came to find, and we found them, and it was a very good size fruit, as you can see here for scale. And the inside, here's the fruit in my hand for scale, and the inside, it looks like this. And yes, this is a very, very good fruit. And so I share these photographs with many people and some of my friends who grow passion fruit commercially in Colombia. And they said, no, our ambigua looks like this. And it's kind of like yours, but here it is, I'm holding it for scale. In my last trip, when I showed them the photograph, they said, no, you have something different. This is what they are calling ambigua in Colombia. And so from the same plant, the same that I showed you before, the green one. So they gave me the fruit, and then they said, open it. And when I opened it, it had a very small amount of fruit. So it has a very thick rind. And so the pulp to rind ratio in this case is very different. And so is this Chiapas plant the Rio Ambigua? Is this the Rio Ambigua? We don't know. We could be having two different plants. All we know is that the Colombians are interested in the South Central American because it has much better pulp or a lot more pulp and a much better flavor. This one is good, but it's just a very small cavity for the fruit, and it's just a bunch of rind. And so there's more work for me to do to go back to each of those countries and find the genes and determine which one is the new species. And so we're getting close to the end. Here is Garki that we collected the seeds in Suriname and grew the plant here and waited many weeks and even took a trip kind of thinking that I was going to miss the fruit because I've been keeping my eyes on it for a while. It took a while for it to kind of mature. I even put a bag to make sure that if it falls, I will not lose it. And here's for scale with my hand. And there it is when I was very happy that it is now changed color and I will get to enjoy a new passion fruit. And there's the bag that I make sure that it was in so I wouldn't lose it. And then I opened it and it had no pulp. It's just a bunch of seeds. The pulp itself is just a very thin layer. I'm like, oh, oh well, it was my months of waiting into nothing because this is going to definitely be a do not eat category because there's nothing for you to eat unless you want a bunch of seeds. And so here's just a selection of the different passion fruits that I came across in Colombia. And here's for scale and how they look inside. And here's a selection of different passion fruits that I have grown here in Southern California. So including some of the yellow and the speckled. And here's a few more and a couple more that I think I share with the LA chapter of the California Red Fruit Growers. And because in one of the seminars that I gave, somebody challenged me and they said that they came because they saw the word aphrodisiac on the title. And I did not mention, then I had to include this, that passion fruits are good for you. And eating more passion fruit is going to improve your health. And in doing so, it's going to help you in a lot of other things, like the aphrodisiac components. So there has been a lot of research, and there's still a lot of research happening into passion fruit. And who knows, we may find some very good uses for them in the future as far as medicine. But these are some of the researchers, what at least tentatively they have found. And so, yes, good for antioxidants. Yes, good for diseases. Yes, this is the super of the superfruits. That's my opinion. Of course, that's going to be an unbiased opinion. And there's going to be a lot of other wonderful things that are going to be good for your health. So, yes, you should be eating a lot more passion fruit because it's going to be good for you. And so, with that, I will thank you for spending the time, and I will address any questions that you may have. So if you have a question, just unmute yourself, and then I will answer it. Just unmute yourself and then talk, I guess.
Love the lecture. As always, great lecture. I don't know how the heck you find so many passion fruits in the world. But as soon as this pandemic is over, I can't wait to come back down to Long Beach and get a closer look at some of them.
I see all you guys a tour.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jorge. We really appreciated it.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Professor.
Is passion fruit, I noticed from a lot of your shots were in the growing fields, it looked like the ground was quite dry. Is it a moisture liking plant or more dry and intermittent moisture?
It's a tropical plant, but like any commercial operation, they're going to be commercially, they're going to be grown with drip irrigation. And so they only water the spots because like every other product, they're dealing with diseases and problems. So most, I think the photographs that I shown are from Ecuador, Colombia, which are kind of like the high altitudes area. So that's why I think it looks dry. Uh, I have yet to come across like a farm in Brazil or some of the real tropical moist areas. So right now that's where my travels have taken me, and that's where I got those photographs. That's the only weird thing that I can think about. But no, they would like water if you can give it to them.
I wanted to say that, Mark, that's very cruel. He is eating a passion fruit and it looks really good. What kind is yours?
You saw that, didn't you?
I saw that as well. It looks like the red.
No, actually, it's the purple. Well, I believe it's the purple. You know,
That's red
it
to
is
me.
very sweet. But you're right about the statement. There, you have, at least for this one, the sweet content grows significantly if you let it sit for like until it gets very wrinkled. When it's very wrinkled, it's very sweet. Before that, if you take it straight off the tree after it falls, it's quite tart.
Yes. So any other questions?
Have you found that passion fruit requires a great deal of heat to develop and ripen?
Yes. And so that brings two problems. So with the ones that I keep mentioning from the high altitudes, the heat kills them. So you can grow them very well for the spring, and as soon as summer comes in here in Southern California, which is dry, they just wither and die, wilt and die. And then a few other, like the golden yellow passion fruit, they tend to flower later in the season. So you see them flowering like August, which then becomes a problem because then we come our winter and the fruits don't ripen as well. Now, the purple one tends to flower like in March. So that one you'll be eating by the fruits by early summer. And the red ones kind of follow like April, May, and then that can go all the way until September. And so depending on which one you have, yeah, that's going to be a problem if they decide to flower later or later in the year. Ideally, if they flower in February, March, right now it's 90 degrees out there. But then you have the entire summer for them to get sweeter, and yeah, they'll get sweet. Forgot to mention that a single vine can produce about an average of about 100 to 200 fruits. And so when I saw the price for 350 a piece, like I'm in the wrong business. But fruits, the vines are going to be very prolific. And so you just need one or two and a little bit of space. And for most of, with the exceptions of the high altitude ones, all the others will prefer to be in as much sun as possible. And yeah, a lot of water, as much water as you can possibly give, especially when the fruits are set so that they are going to get to maximum size.
What is the fruiting lifetime of an individual vine?
It's in right now in commercial production is going to be about 3 years, but in Central and South America they can get a plant from seed to fruit in about 6 months. For us it's about a year. It's a little more than a year.
But my concept was
sorry?
how long
Yeah,
will it grow?
so it's about 3 years for commercial production. For us, it's going to average to about 8 to 10 years. After 8 years, you're going to see a decline in fruit quality. So by that time, you should be planting your next one in preparation for it to go away. Now, I'm saying average because I have seen vines that are very old that have a very thick stem. And like that, you're more than 8 years. And so, but average for good quality fruit, we can average it to about 8 to 10 years, give or
Thank
take 1 or
you.
2 years.
Thank you.
I noticed again, you were talking about a lot of plantations at higher elevations. As a matter of fact, my house is at 2,500 feet. I'm not sure what type of
No,
elevation.
this is the Andes Mountain.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah, no,
talking-
you're still hot and dry. You're not you're
yeah,
not high.
well, my biggest problem is winds, 30, 40 mile an hour
Yeah,
winds.
yeah.
And that has not bode well with the passion fruit vines I've been trying to grow.
You might consider them growing them like a ground cover, let them just creep and crawl on the ground, not having, and let them climb wherever they want. And that will keep them away from the wind if they happen to just be on ground level.
I've never tried that, but I will. I'll
Give it
try
a try.
that.
Jorge, is there a recommended type of fertilizer for passion fruit?
I always say, and people always tell me they grow like weeds. I rarely fertilize mine, if at all. I'll say if you just treat it kindly, like all the other plants, just add some organic matter. If you have fertilizer, I'll say, I won't say Miracle Grow, but I just as a complete and a balanced fertilizer if you want to boost their production. But otherwise, if you just treat it like any other fruit, just a little bit of love and care, and it's just going to reward you with lots of fruit. But no, I don't think there's anything special about them other than the few selected ones that you have to put them in the right place. But otherwise, it's just kind of plant and run away because here they come.
How about trimming them? Because mine has a lot of dead wood.
Yes, so the deadwood you can cut whenever you want. That's not going to hurt them. The other thing that is very important is that the flowers and the fruits are going to be produced in what is known as the new year's growth or the current growth. And so if you have a vine that is going to be 30 feet high, the fruit is going to be 30 feet high.
Okay.
So what is recommended is that you let the vine into its space and let it fruit. And once you harvest the fruit, and this is going to be depending on the season, if nothing else, let's just aim for February when it starts to get warm. Then you can cut back half of the plant. And I'm saying half because if you cut the entire plant, you may get into such a shock that you will kill it. So cut half of the plant from the main stem, give it about 2 feet out. Cut it back to the 2 feet from the main stem, let it recover for a few weeks, and then go back and cut the other half or a quarter, however you want. And so that prevents the shock. And so that also brings it into a nice small area, and all the new growth that will come from that after that will be flowering and fruiting for you.
Excellent.
So yeah, you can do it on a yearly basis. So after you harvest the fruit, you can start to cut it back.
So
Is there a time of year that's better?
I'll say February, March before it starts to flower. Remember that, because once you start the flower, then you're going to be sacrificing them. I would not do it in October because keeping in mind that they are tropicals, and then we're going to go into whatever cold season we have in California. So preferably, if you're going to do it, if you procrastinated and you didn't do it, it will be like the beginning of spring before they start to set flowers. Or
Thank you.
immediately, if you happen to harvest them during the summer is also a very good time before the cold, so that it has a time to get over the shock.
Great, thank you.
Any other question? I have a question that says, are there purple varieties that are particularly recommended, especially among those available in the nurseries? I think you only get one, just the purple. There's no real variation to them. Most of what you'll find in the nursery will be the reddish if they have a different name. But purples are just going to be grown from seed. It's just, they're all going to be good. It says, do you recommend propagating them from cuttings or seeds? I like both. The seeds are going to be much more difficult to come across, especially from new wild individuals. So In most cases, when I come across a new plant, is because somehow I get the seeds, I get a plant to mature, and then I can do cuttings from there. So the answer to that is however I can get them. If I can get seeds, I'm happy to do through seeds. If I can just find a plant and take some pieces and propagate them through cuttings, I'll gladly do that. I also wrote the chapter on grafting passion fruit for growing some of those high altitude that will normally die during the summer, and so be able to graft them and get them a better rootstock so that they can be able to survive the heat here in Southern California. And so grafting is my other option for some of the more finicky individuals.
So
Is
you're saying,
pilarifolia self? No, I wish. Pilarifolia does not self. You have to hand pollinate it, hopefully with another pilarifolia. So, sorry, question?
you said, from what I'm understanding now, most passion fruit grow true from seed.
Yes.
That's unusual. Oh, okay. Good to know.
So let's say the purple, you grow all those, if you take a purple fruit or the seeds from a purple fruit, you grow all those seeds, they're going to give you a purple fruit and it's going to be good. When you're looking at the different species, unfortunately, it is very difficult for me to say I have Trudeau type seeds, and that is because I usually have to cross them to be able to get the fruit. But the purple, something that will self, it will usually give you something very compatible or something very similar to what you have taken the seeds from.
Good to know.
Any other questions?
Do you dry the seeds before you plant them?
You don't need to. You can just take them from the fruit straight into wherever you want them or into a container. No need to clean them. I will dry them or I will clean them only if I am going to store them. And that's just to prevent the mold from killing them. But otherwise, no, you don't need to dry them. And it's best to plant them as soon as possible, keeping in mind they are going to be tropical, so the longer you wait, the less viability that is going to be found within the seeds. The other thing that I'm going to caution you and warn you, if you are going to be purchasing seeds online, first of all, I will not do it because they're never going to send me the right plant. Second of all, when you get the seeds, make sure that the color of the seeds are going to be either a brown or a black color, because those are mature seeds. I have purchased seeds and they send me white seeds or very light color. Those are immature, those are duds, and nothing's going to come out of that. And obviously I paid a lot of money for them because it might be some weird species, but at the end I know I'm not going to get any. So make sure that the seed color are either brown or the darker color black or darker than that. And in my travels, have I found fruit? Yes. Sometimes it's way too green for the time I was there. Like, well, if I would have been here a month later, I would have gotten a lot of seeds, but there's nothing I can do. And it's just the time.
What about this one? I have this one now. So
open it, and those will probably have the black seeds by now. But open it, and if they're white seeds, don't even bother with them. But this is if you're going to purchase them online. But yeah, those coming from the fruit, if it's fresh fruit, you can plant them right now, and you should be getting fruits maybe by the beginning of next year.
Oh, because I had this wine for a long time, more than 10 years, 12 years. And most of the plant dried up, so I had to clean up last year. So I have a very little plant left. So this year I had 4 or 5 fruits. So I should
take some seeds, plant them so that you can replace that individual that is moving on to plant heaven.
So that's not going to take over the leftover plant.
Most likely it will not. It's already past away its prime. And so if it's already dying back, it's going to be going to plant heaven.
And then you said it needs a lot of water when it's flowering or fruiting.
So yes, especially if we get a heat spell, sometimes we get those 100 degrees that if it's a lot of flowers, they'll dry out and they'll kill them. And so that's the time when you should definitely have some moisture on the roots.
Or Santa Ana's.
The Santa Anas, living by the hills, somewhere exposed to everything. But yeah, tropical, they're not. Most of the fruiting forms will require some water. I know there's some of the wild types, the non-fruiting form, the not good ones that I've seen get away and growing in the wild here, no water, nothing. But those are not the ones that you want to grow for fruits. The ones for fruit, you should give them water on a regular basis. They're not drought tolerant, or do not consider them drought tolerant, because you're going to be sacrificing the yields on your fruit.
Thank you. That's it.
Jorge, have you developed any of your own hybrids?
Oh, we don't do that.
Oh, okay.
My goal is to collect, see, photograph all the species, the ones that are made by nature. Maybe when I achieve that goal, then I will look into making my own. I developed one hybrid, but that's about it. And I can get lost in hybridizing, especially since I cross the plants to get the fruit. That was my goal. It was never to grow all of those seeds and see what comes out, because all of them could give me something different. But I could get lost. And I'm sure you also have the problem of space, that if you grow everything you absolutely want, you're not going to have any room. And so as time has gone by, like everybody else, you started with everything, but then you have to minimize into some of the more important things that you definitely want.
Yes.
And so it's the same thing. I can only grow some certain number at a time.
Thank you.
The fruit, you wait until it wrinkles, because then it will be sweeter.
So if you're growing the fruit, you wait until it falls off from the vine naturally. You shake the vine and whatever it falls. And then, yes, if you don't need to eat it immediately, again, you can, and you want to make it a little bit better, put it on top of a table until it begins to wrinkle, and then you can enjoy it, and it's going to be better. Now, depending on your sea fruit and depending on the humidity in your house and whatever, it may be a few days, it may be 1 or 2 weeks. So you have to just kind of experiment and see how many days it takes for your fruit in your location to be at its prime, as they would say.
I usually wait until it wrinkles a lot.
Yeah.
But for planting the seeds, I don't have to wait. I just put it
For
down.
planting, you can kind of open it right now and enjoy half of the fruit and plant the other half.
Okay, good to know, because I didn't know that I could get a plant from the seed. I would have tried a long time back. Thank you.
So I don't see any more questions in the chat. Maybe I missed a bunch. But if there's any more questions, then I'll just reply to them through email. All right, so let me stop the recording so that we